Bonjour à tous. This is the third panel on the blue stage, le troisième panel sur le stage bleu. Le titre de la conférence pour aujourd'hui sera « Passer à l'info nuagique en toute confiance, the move to the cloud in all confidence ». We are going to host the panel in English. I'm going to keep speaking English from now on. For those of you who require translation, you can go on channel 3 to do so, and it should be working flawlessly. Let me please, in the meantime, introduce our panelists with us. To my right, I would like to introduce Estelle AZEMARD from OVH Cloud. Estelle is, I have the introduction here. She's the VP America at OVH Cloud. She joined in September 2020 with the mission of organizing the strategy of the OVH Cloud Group in Canada and in Latin America. She is a lawyer by training. Fine, very good. And she left France in 2005 to come to Quebec. Estelle, thank you very much for being with us today. And to my far right, we have Mohammad QURESHI, who is the Corporate Chief Information Officer and Associate Deputy Minister within the Ministry of Public and Business Service Delivery, leading Government Information Technology Ontario, which also is shortened to GovTech-ON. I'm going to let the panelists introduce their respective organization, and we're going to move to the question of this panel.
Thank you, Jean-François. Hi, everybody. So OVH Cloud is obviously a cloud provider. It's one of the top 10 cloud providers at a global level. We are the first cloud provider in Europe. 37 data centers across the world, present on 4 continents. And in Canada, it's been 10 years now, with the opening of second data centers in the Toronto area very soon. So just to resume, hyperscaler, but with a very, very different positioning in terms especially of data protection and sovereign cloud.
Thanks so much, Estelle. Mohammad QURESHI, Corporate CIO and Associate Deputy Minister with the Province of Ontario. With the Province of Ontario, we have a federated model around INIT. We have about 4,000 staff supporting the INIT organization and supporting all of the ministries. We have about 11 CIOs across the ministries, and they're categorized or grouped into portfolios. We have one for health, one for justice, and so on. And then we have 3 enterprise CIOs, one focused in on cybersecurity, one focused in on infrastructure, all of the back office things like network, desktop, hosting, data centers, service desk. And then we have one that really does support our investment planning and technology strategy. The population in Ontario is about 14.5 million, and we support all of the digital services supporting those 14.5 million people.
Thank you very much. And I think with this, we're going to jump to the meat of what this panel really is about. It is in the title. The question we're being asked here is, what do we mean by trust in the context of the cloud and the data sphere? I'll let you begin, Mohammad, and then Estelle.
Certainly. Thanks so much, Jean-François. I would say the only business government is in is trust. And if government loses trust, they lose the ability to actually run a province or run a federal nation or a state. So when it comes to security, when it comes to data, when it comes to ensuring that we're running services that build trust with the Ontario citizen, it's extremely important to the government's brand. So when we think about moving things out to the cloud, ensuring that we're using cloud in a responsible way, ensuring that we're protecting the data on behalf of citizens, ensuring that we're not giving away their data, because there's a lot of byproducts that happen as we start consuming cloud services, as we move our workloads out to cloud, ensuring that we actually have protections in place to ensure that the byproducts of data that are created by using cloud are protected and that the IP and the information really does with either the government or in a responsible manner. There is a shared responsibility between the cloud providers and the Government of Ontario. So just ensuring that we continue to sort of pull that thread of trust right across all of the work that we do. And it really does buckle down into 4 key areas that we've been using. So in order to ensure that we're building public trust, we really do ensure that we have legislation and policy in place to protect the data and protect the workloads and the services that we deliver. We ensure that we actually develop a technical program to ensure that the teams that are using cloud can build out the talent and leverage cloud. We ensure that we have a very robust procurement process in place. So we have procurement vehicles that really do look at a lot of the T's and C's that we have with cloud vendors. How do we ensure that the cloud vendor also follows our data sovereignty and data residency requirements? How do we ensure that we have privacy protections built into our contracts and third-party assurances with our cloud provider? And then the last one just to highlight is really around the technology platforms. So ensuring that as we onboard our cloud providers, we've centralized a lot of that work within the Government of Ontario. So we have a cloud broker that actually brokers all of our cloud services. So any one of the ministries that want to use cloud have to ensure that they're going through this cloud broker. We have enterprise guardrails stood up, we have platforms stood up, and then as we onboard cloud providers to it, all of those enterprise controls automatically flow. So especially as we have that shared responsibility, there's a responsibility on the vendor side and the cloud provider side, but then there's also the responsibility on our side, and we want to do that in a consistent way right across.
Thank you very much. Estelle?
Yeah, so for you, my point of view will be obviously very different and complementary, because for you, trust is like the key element of a relation between you and your citizens. And regarding the view of a cloud provider, trust is one of our first commitment, because it's fundamental for us that we ensure we ensure citizens that they will be able to move to the cloud with confidence. When we think about trust, often we think about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is the ability to protect the integrity of the data, the availability of the data, and the confidentiality of the data. And this is fundamentals. And for that, it's important that a cloud provider is compliant with the highest level of certifications. But trust goes beyond cybersecurity. And when you think about that, the word trust is a very strong word. And just even in the common life, when you entrust someone with something, implicitly it means that you entrust something that is important for you. And by doing so, that means that you are vulnerable. And you expect from this person, from this organization, not having to suffer any direct or indirect negative consequences. And when you think about that, and in the cloud, it's exactly the same thing. When an organization entrusts a cloud provider with its data, well, it gives, what has the most precious, it's the data. And so you need to be sure that this cloud provider will answer with the right adequation to a certain principle, a certain rules. So first, I think it's very important, and like Mohammad said, data residency, where will be located the data. But above all, and what is more important, is this data can be transferred out of this country? Is it possible that it will be transferred out of Canada? We know, for example, that in 2018, the Cloud Act has been adopted in the United States, saying that all data that is hosted by an American cloud provider can be transferred out of the country, can be transferred to the United States upon a decision of a jurisdiction court, and even if this data is located in Canada. So, not saying it's bad, just saying that you need to ask yourself, is it okay that my data may be transferred out of Canada? So this is very, very important. I think second point is what will be done with your data. is it okay with you? Is it okay for organization, for citizens, that the data may be used for another purpose other than what it was intended before? And we know recently, if you read the news, that one of the giant hyperscaler used customer data in order to improve his own AI algorithm. So, second thing that is important, the use of the data. And then, and I agree with you, we need not to forget the technology side. Will you stay in control of the technology? Will you be able to reverse your decision? Will you be able to move from the cloud? Because if you can't, because of technology lock-in, contractual lock-in, cost lock-in, if you can't, then maybe you are forgiven a little bit of your freedom. And if you're not free in the cloud, then you lose the control. And so just to resume, but for me, trust will be the notion of control, and organizations, they need to stay in control of their digital strategy. I think this is fundamental. It's the notion of strategic autonomy.
Thank you very much, Estelle and Mohammad, for a very great answer. I would like just, I think, your answer putting trust at the forefront like this begs the question, at least to me, how do we foster this trust? How do we create it from the get-go? And what kind of strategies? And what is very interesting to me is that we have both the public and private side of this question here. What are your different strategies to foster this trust so that individuals are comfortable with the digital transformation that we are experiencing right now? And this time I'll let you, Estelle, go first.
Okay. Thank you. So how we do put this in practice. So first, regarding the cybersecurity side, we know it's a very complex environment. It's evolving rapidly in terms of market trends, in terms of usage, practice, cyber threats, illegal framework as well. So it's very important, and it's one of the first commitments, again, for a cloud provider, to remain compliant and to have a strong information system security policy that evolves in order to always remain up to date. So this is an evidence. Regarding the data transfer, data residency, and beyond that, the data sovereignty, well, it's important to know that we are one of the top 10 hyperscalers at a global level, but we are the only one that is not American, neither Chinese. We have a DNA European DNA, sorry. So what does it mean for you? It means that we are Cloud Act free. It means that we are not subject to extraterritorial laws. And it means, in a very practical manner, that if we receive a request from the USA jurisdiction to transfer any kind of data, then we have a power to say no. For this reason, we do not operate in the USA. We do operate, but through another organization, totally separated for OVH Cloud Group, on a legal point of view, operational point of view, information system point of view. So we are the only hyperscaler able currently to guarantee that data hosted in Canada won't be transferred to the United States. So this is the first point. Regarding the data usage, we have very, very ethical values. We decided, OVH Cloud has been founded 20 years ago, and we decided at the early stage that we would not resell any kind of services or any kind of software. That way, we are what we call a pure player. That means that we are only providing cloud services. By doing so, it's very simple. We have no interest in customer data. We are the only one. We do not touch the customer data. Regarding the technology now, our baseline is innovation for freedom. And for our founder, Octave Klaba, it was very important that our customers keep their freedom of choice. So they are able to build any kind of cloud infrastructure they want in the cloud, and then just move from the cloud if they want to. So for this reason, we are providing a totally interoperable infrastructure. So no technology lock-in, very simple solutions. We're using open source solutions, so like OpenStack, or simple technologies that are commonly used by your customer. So I'm going to give a name of VMware, Nutanix, NetApp, all common names that I'm sure you probably know. So no technology lock-in. Our customers have always the choice going back from the cloud. I must add no contractual lock-in, no lock-in regarding the cost because we don't charge for egress fees. Yeah.
That's great, Estelle. I'm going to talk to trust in two different ways. The first way is just public trust and trust with citizens. And the second way is building confidence and trust in your political masters to allow you to do the work that you need to do. So on the public side, the reason why our cybersecurity and our corporate I&IT organization is embedded in the Ministry of Public and Business Service Delivery is at the end of the day, we're delivering public services and we're delivering digital services for citizens to interact with. And the way that we build trust through that is one, they're quick, convenient services that people can rely on, but they're also secure and protected, and we're ensuring the privacy of citizens. And in order for us to do that, we need to ensure that we have partnerships with cloud providers that embed those principles right into our contracts and right into our agreements. I'll use the example of, and I'm sure I'm not going to name the cloud provider, but a lot of us use productivity tools that are based off of the cloud. I'll say email servers and whatever else. When we used to have them on-prem, there's a lot of behaviors that you can derive from how people are interacting with their emails, how people are interacting with their chats. There's a really important conversation to ensure that you're building trust with your partners, to ensure that they are not trying to monetize off of those behaviors. So a lot of those byproducts that get created just based off of transactions or usage that's happening, it's really important to have those conversations up front, building those into your T's and C's with your contracts and the partnership to ensure that that byproducts being created are the derivative of the byproducts being created come back to the government and have a say with the government around how we want to use it. And it's not a monetary play with your cloud provider around how do you get insights into behaviors, how do you get insights into usage of your cloud provider and other things. The other piece is that there's a shared responsibility between the cloud provider and the public service around if we're hosting data in the cloud, we're going to be putting controls in our place, but then the cloud provider also has to have controls on their side. When it comes to data residency, if we talk about data residency and there's a commitment to keep things, say, in Canada from a data residency perspective and data sovereignty perspective as well to ensure that the laws of Canada are applied and not other jurisdictions, it's really important to ensure that there is confidence between the cloud provider and your organization that those things will be followed. Otherwise, it only takes one story to really lose the confidence and the trust in the public around the services that you're delivering, and it makes it even more difficult for people to interact with government in a digital way if that confidence isn't there. And I'll use, no, I won't use that example. Maybe I'll jump over to my next example of internal building trust and confidence with your political leadership. In order for us to ensure that we continue to build that trust, they do rely on how well are we doing with the public and citizen trust side of it. So ensuring that we are being confident and instilling that confidence with our public leaders to ensure that we have the right agreements in place, we have the right protocols in place, but we're also driving value for money from a trust perspective. So a lot of times I've seen organizations go into the cloud very nonchalantly, but as you get into the cloud, if you're not doing that in a strategic way, you see the cost curves start going up. And as cost curves start going up, people start taking shortcuts from a cybersecurity perspective. They start taking shortcuts from a compliance perspective in other areas. It's really important to ensure that we're managing the cost as you go to cloud. We're showing value for money, but we're also showing an increase of time to market. So when the government was going through the pandemic, the only way we could react with new digital services in days and weeks versus months and years was leveraging some of the technology innovations that came out from cloud. And it was the only way we were able to respond to the pandemic. But at that time, I think every government was in this space, was it didn't matter how much it cost, we just had to get over the pandemic. And people were investing in cloud left, right, and center just to drive that innovation. But a lot of times, people may take shortcuts when they're doing that. It's really important that you take an approach where you're building the controls at an enterprise level, and you're building the visibility into cloud usage. You're building a sustainable operation from a financial perspective, but you also have a sustainable compliance operation to ensure that the data is where it says it is, that the controls are being applied, that you have security reviews that are happening, and we are able to sort of articulate that back to the political leaders to ensure that we're instilling their confidence as well, because the next procurement that comes through, they're going to be looking at what's happened in the past and how do you ensure that you continue to drive that digital transformation and build trust to ensure that you continue to drive digital transformation as well.
Thank you very much. And hearing you speak, hearing about trust, how we build it, how the way that the private sector does it, the way that the public sector does it, the question that comes to my mind next is that what is the shared responsibility on both sides of the coin, I want to say. We know that the move to the data sphere, the cloud, its impact, either that it is intrusion, malware, and so on, but also data protection is industry-wide, government-wide, and so on. So the question is very simple. What do you see as your role and your respective responsibility, or what we like to call share responsibility in this case? Estelle? Mohammad, I'm sorry.
I would say there's a couple of things from a shared responsibility perspective. We have legislation in Ontario that is the Freedom of Information, Privacy and Protection Act. We call it FIPA for short. And then we have a municipal version, which is MFIPA. And within that, we have it directed around the responsibility of government and organizations to protect data from a citizen perspective. And we also lay out where the data sovereignty and data residency requirements are as part of FIPA and MFIPA. There is a slight shift in that when we get into the healthcare sector. So we have the Public Health Information Privacy and Protection Act as well, and we call that PHIPA. And in that, there's a few nuances. A lot of times, the data residency requirements and the data sovereignty requirements come from the program area that's being used and the services that we're delivering. So based off of that, we need to ensure that we're mapping those data residency, data sovereignty requirements onto the cloud providers and the workloads that are actually moving out to cloud. Not all of them get the same sort of rules applied right across, because as you start restricting where you can store your data, how you can use it, it also there's a balance between how do you drive innovation versus how do you protect data and the security aspect of it. So we want to make sure that we don't apply the same rules right across, but we do take a case-by-case approach to ensuring that we're applying the right security controls, the right data sovereignty, and data residency requirements. So as we do that work, that's where FIPA and MFIPA do start coming into play. But that also provides the opportunity for the public citizens to comment on that legislation and how we're going to be leveraging their data, how we're protecting their data, and we have open consultation all the time around that, anytime there's an amendment to it, and it does allow the public to have a voice into the development of that public legislation.
Yes, I think we are living some really, we talk about that, a digital revolution, and it has, as you mentioned, geopolitical consequences as well. So we used to have economic spaces that were interconnected with commercial exchange, for example, but across boundaries. So in a way, it was controlled by the states. But with the digital transformation, what happened is huge amount of data that are transitioning now not between states, but between private operators, so the big tech giant. And if you think about that, you add on top of it the fact that these tech giants, there are very few of them. It's an oligopoly currently. And they are keeping and absorbing more and more data at an exponential level. And if you add on top of it, the power of AI, the power of machine learning, and the dependency of the consumer, because we are responsible as well, we can see that there is a shift of the power between the states to a private operator. So this is a very, very central question. And for this reason, all the states just recognize that there was something that they needed to address, because I think it was the Chinas who did the first, they adopted the Cybersecurity law in 2017. And then we had the Cloud Act in 2018 in USA. We had then Europe, who adopted in 2018 as well the GDPR. That is one of the most rigorous regulation regarding data protection. And there was two different approaches. So one of them was more to control the data. And so for United States, for example, it was important just, okay, the power is the data. So I need to be sure that I will have access to this data, because otherwise I will lose my power with other states. And for Europe, it was just the contrary. So it was more an approach aimed to protect this data. So just to recap, in terms of shared responsibility now, it's the responsibility of a government to protect the citizen and to be sure to remain in control of its data. So it's very important that the government is establishing the legal framework. But then it has also, and I agree with you, Mohammad, just to be sure that there will be a right balance between the innovation requirements, the economic growth requirements, and the protection of the citizens. But now there is a legal framework. I think it's also very important that the government enforce the regulation, and there is sanction and penalties if it's not followed up by the cloud providers. And for a cloud provider point of view, I think we are responsible in providing this trusted framework, first complying with a legal framework, being up to date with the highest level of certifications, of course, and being able to provide a strong guarantee regarding data residency and data sovereignty as well.
Can I just add on to it? Because Estelle triggered a thought in me as well. So I talked about the policy and legislation side of things, but there's also other levers government can use. And one of those levers is a procurement vehicle that we would create. So when we talk about AI, it's all about data at the end of the day, and then the byproducts around data. And then when we start thinking about how do we ensure that when we're partnering up with cloud providers, that we have responsible and ethical use of data and the actual ownership around it. So one of the other things that the Ontario government has recently done is we've released some guidance and principles around the ethical use and responsible use around AI. But what those principles do is they get embedded into our procurement vehicles. So anytime we go out to market, there's a very transparent conversation with our partners that we're partnering up with around the use of the data, the byproducts, and then how do we ensure that there's transparency and visibility around if there's any AI technologies or if there's any other technologies being used. And then the last piece is it goes back into culture as well, and how do we ensure that our staff are trained to ensure that they're also leveraging technology in a responsible and an ethical way. So we have quite a few, we really do partner up with some of our cloud providers to have enterprise skills initiatives being deployed. And we have, every year we have over 2,000 staff going through these enterprise skills initiatives. One, to learn how to use the technology, but then two, just reinforce the ethical, responsible obligations of our staff. So as we develop digital public services, that those are automatically being embedded right in there as well.
Thank you very much. And I think these two words, ethical and responsible, is a fantastic segue to our final question for the panel, which is sustainability. It's impossible to discuss, I think, these kinds of changes, the digital transformation that we're having at this moment, without, in which cloud computing is a very important part of, without discussing carbon footprint and environmental concerns, right? And the question, once again, is very simple, but I would love your thoughts on the following, maybe a more holistic question in a sense, but how do we ensure sustainability here as we move along, and that cloud computing is more present than ever?
I think it's a very important question, and just getting back to what I said, I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this panel, trust. When you entrust someone, you expect not to have any direct or indirect negative consequences, and so sustainability, yes, I think it's totally part of trust. So on a hyperscaler point of view, and regarding our business model, the sustainability is really at the very heart of the way we are functioning. We are the only hyperscaler with a vertically integrated industrial model. What does it mean? It means that we are building our own servers, we are building our own data centers, and then we take our servers, putting in our data centers, and we deliver our cloud solutions. Why is it important? Because that means that we value the entire value chain, we master the entire value chain, so we are able to use specific technology like water cooling system. We don't use air conditioning in our data centers, so we are one with the best power usage efficiency. I see some looks, how do we do that? Well, we take some water, it goes into the servers, cold water, then it's heated, then it goes back, and it's cooled down outside of the data centers. For this reason, we are consuming almost zero energy. So then, by mastering the entire value chain, we are functioning in a circular economy model. After the first life of a server, usually it goes to the recycle or to the garbage, or I don't know. But at OVH Cloud, what we do, we disassemble the server after the end of life, we test the components, and then we are rebuilding another range of servers for other usage. And we can do that 2, 3, 4 times. So for this reason, we have a very, very positive impact on the environment. This question is crucial when we know that aviation, civil aviation, represent between 4%, 6%, depending on the calculations of the global carbon footprint. I don't know if you know that, but a digital economy, it represents, it's growing, and now it's almost 4% of the total global carbon footprint. So soon it's gonna be higher than civil aviation. So it's important to continue to innovate in this area. We have a whole research and development department that is working on this question. And we released a few weeks ago our first carbon calculator. So now our customers can, from the website, just where they can see their invoice, I'm just gonna go into the details, but they can have their carbon footprint directly from our managers. So they just click on a button and they can see the way where, depending of the infrastructure where it is located, depending of the data centers, depending of the kind of service they are using, then they have the exact carbon footprint.
When I think about sustainability, I think about it in 4 different ways. So there's environmental sustainability, there's social sustainability, and then there's financial sustainability. And when I think about environmental sustainability, I think Estelle really hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of work that we do with our cloud providers to ensure that they are driving sustainability. So when I start thinking about the compute power required for AI, and we continue to see an increase on the compute power, if we do not manage sustainability from environmental impact and carbon footprint perspective, we will really start seeing a deterioration as the compute power starts escalating exponentially. So there's a real push whenever we do procurements to ensure that the vendors we're working with are taking environmental sustainability and really looking at how do they get to a net zero carbon footprint over time. So as we start driving workloads out into the cloud, the government isn't contributing to some of the carbon issues that we have. The other aspect that I mentioned was social sustainability. So the government of Ontario spends hundreds of millions of dollars a year on cloud services every year. So there's an opportunity, and we do this anytime we go into negotiations with our cloud vendors, is how are they actually contributing back to the social developments of our communities within Ontario. So don't be shy about leveraging your buying power to really drive social responsibility and corporate responsibility, not just globally, but also right into your own backyards, to ensure that the communities that you're working with within your organization are benefiting from some of the spend that you're doing as an organization. And then the last one, it goes back to the financial, sorry, there's two more. The financial side is ensuring that as your compute power goes up, how do you ensure that you're creating a sustainable operation by ensuring that, I'll use AI, everyone's excited by AI. Everyone across the government of Ontario is excited. We have 11 CIOs, and every single one of them wants to go out and start doing AI right now. But in order for us to do this in a responsible way, we ensure that we actually have really great relationships with our vendor partners. We stand up our AI platforms once, and everyone gets to reuse them over and over based off of the use cases that they have. So one of the use cases I'll share is we may have policy research that needs to happen. How do we really identify some of the red tape in our policy and legislative documents that we have? And every ministry is impacted by that. So instead of every ministry trying to stand up a cloud provider partnering on AI, we do that once as an enterprise. We do a use case. We share that across all the ministries, and we actually drive from a sustainable financial and operations perspective. And then the last one I would just say is really partnering up with our cloud providers to drive sustainable talent as well. So ensuring that they're investing in our people, not just within our organizations, but they're actually creating curriculum for schools and universities that we work with to drive talent into our organization, that they actually create the curriculum so when people are graduating, they can hit the road right off of day one. And we actually hire a lot of those students coming out of universities to drive diversity, to drive inclusion, but also to drive a sustainable talent pool, because I think all of us struggle with cyber talent today at large.
Thank you very much. Well, we have 5 minutes. So I wanted first to thank the both of you very much. You're both very busy individuals, and we truly appreciate your time. And I'm sure the audience appreciate the perspective of your respective offices. So thank you very much for being here today. We have about 5 minutes for questions. If anyone would like to ask one to one of our panelists or to the panel itself, you can come up to the microphone right here. Please state your name and where and who you're with, and ask your question. Do not be shy. No questions? So all of you have the opportunity every day in your life to speak with an associate deputy minister and a VP for an entire company in Canada. We have much more interesting lives than I do. So, well then, by all means, I would give you the final words if you want to. Is there anything we haven't covered today that you would like to point to? Is there any response from what we've said during the panel that you would like to have the opportunity to engage with?
The only thing I would say, Jean-François, is it really is a partnership between the organization and your strategic cloud provider, and making sure that you're having those open and transparent conversations right off the bat really does set you up to have a successful partnership. And ensuring that you know the principles of that organization, that I know Estelle and OVH have really great principles, to ensure that those principles match the principles of your organization, to ensure that success of that partnership goes a long way.
No, just to resume, I think the final word will be just to remind that you need to stay in control of your digital strategy and not forget it, because you can't abdicate one part of your freedom. So that would be my last message. Yeah.
Thank you very much again to the both of you. Thank you very much to the audience. It was great to have you. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. And we'll be here all day at the blue stage. Thank you.